Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Yawma la yanfa'u malun wa la banun illa man ata Allah biqalbin salim. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Quran, Yawma, remember that day, prepare for that day of judgment. La yanfa'u mal, that none of your wealth, property, possessions, nothing will be of benefit to you. Your home, your furniture, your furnishings, your fixtures, none of that will be of any benefit to you. All of your carpets and cushions and clothing, none of it will be of any benefit to you. Wala banoon, and even your own sons and children and all worldly relations will be of no benefit to you. Illa man atallaha biqalbin salim, the only person who will be successful on that day will be whomsoever brings to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a qalbun salim, a pure and untainted heart, a purified heart, a heart that was pure of all unlawful love for ghairullah, a heart that was pure of all unlawful anger and hatred and enmity, a heart that was pure of all unlawful greed and love for this world, a heart that was pure of all unlawful conceit, vanity, pride and arrogance, a qalbun salim. Only that person will be blessed by the rahmah of Allah Ta'ala and then admitted into Jannah. And Sayyidina Rasulullah explained in a hadith that no person will go into Jannah even if mithqal dharra, even if they have one atom's weight of takabbur in their heart. So it means a person has to bring to Allah Ta'ala on that day a 100% pure heart. And if we don't have that 100% pure heart on that day, then we will have to go into Jahannam to get purified. So actually, let me explain. There are two processes before the Day of Judgment, two possibilities, and two possibilities after the Day of Judgment, or on the Day of Judgment. Before the Day of Judgment, there are two ways to keep that heart pure. First way is called taqwa. Taqwa means that the woman, she doesn't do any sin, and she doesn't think any sin, and she doesn't desire any sin, and she doesn't feel any sin. All of these four things are called taqwa. So if we're neither doing, thinking, desiring, or feeling sin, then we're in taqwa, and in that sense our heart will be pure. The other option is that, okay, if you slipped and either you did a sin, or you thought about a sin, or you desired a sin, or you felt some sinful feeling, then you have to make tawbah. So taqwa means that it keeps pure, and tawbah means that we purify it after it was impure. So if a woman makes true tawbah, then Allah Ta'ala restores her to that same purity as if she had originally had taqwa. So there are two possibilities before that day. Either she is on taqwa or she is on tawbah. So every woman, every mu'min for that matter, should make sure that in my life I am either on one of two things. मेरी पूरी ज़िंदगी में दो हाल से खाली न हो, या मैं तक़वा पर कायम दायम हूँ या अपना तौबा तायब कर रही हूँ. Right? But on the Day of Judgment there are two possibilities. Either a person goes to Jannah because they bring to Allah Ta'ala this pure heart, so then Allah Ta'ala out of His rahmah, out of His mercy will accept all of their deeds, accept their tazkiyah and their tahara, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send them into Jannah. Or the second option is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may address His rahmah towards them, kun fayakun, and He may choose to forgive them on the Day of Judgment for some sin that remained unforgiven in this world. So Yawm al-Qiyamah will also be a madhar of the maghfirah of Allah ta'ala. It will also be a place and time when Allah ta'ala's forgiveness is manifested. So either the person who didn't have sin, still they will need Allah ta'ala's rahmah and mercy, and then they will enter Jannah, or they came to Allah ta'ala not 100% pure, nor 100% purified. They had some sin that remained, so then Allah ta'ala can choose to send His maghfirah on them on that day. And the third option is if Allah ta'ala doesn't choose to forgive us for the sin on that day, then Allah ta'ala will choose and decide to have us sent to Jahannam to get purified for that sin. So obviously each and every one of us would want that I should first and foremost try my utmost best to live a life of taqwa. So month of Ramadan came to us for this reason, لَعَلُّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that we may live a life of taqwa. Second option is if, okay, I can't be on taqwa, then I should make sure I'm on tawbah. So Allah Ta'ala put that feature in this month of Ramadan as well, that Allah Ta'ala accepts the tawbah from every sinner for every sin in this blessed month of Ramadan. No one should view it as an option that I should show up to Allah Ta'ala on the Day of Judgment still with some sins left over, because none of us can say, will Allah Ta'ala send His forgiveness upon us on that day for the sins, or will He choose to purify us from sin, not through His maghfirah, but rather through the fire of Jahannam? So we should want then to purify our heart in this world. So this word in Quran, qalb, it means the heart of our ruh. You see, one is the heart of the body that pumps blood, that is a heartbeat, that causes your pulse. That is something the doctors look at to determine whether you're physically alive or physically dead. Qalb is not referring to the physical heart. Qalb is not the word that refers to the heart of the body. Qalb is the word that refers to the heart of the ruh. So that means just like we have a body, we have a ruh. Just like that body has a heart, our ruh has a heart. And the heart of the ruh is called qalb in Quran. So what happens in the qalb? The qalb is the place where we have feelings, is the seat of emotions, whether they're good emotions such as bravery, love for Allah Ta'ala, feeling of iman, feeling of haya, or it can be bad emotions such as cowardice, a feeling of kufr, feeling of hasad. All of the good feelings and bad feelings are in a person's qalb. And the qalb is what controls the whole body. Everything is based on our qalb. That's why Sayyidina Rasulullah said that inna fi jasadi bani Adam, that indeed in the body of every single human being, progeny of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, is a mughda, is a piece, is an organ. And if it is sound, the whole body will be sound. وَإِذَا fasadat, and if it is corrupt, fasadat al-jasadu kulluhu, then the whole body will be corrupt. Ala wa hiya al-qalb, you should know and be informed that that is the heart. So that hadith is referring to the physical heart, but also the spiritual heart. Why? Because there are two other parts of us. One is our mind and one is our nafs. Our mind is where we have thoughts and our nafs is where we have desires. But both the mind and the nafs will look at the heart. So if the woman, she has good feelings in her heart, let's say she has love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in her heart, then her mind will always be thinking thoughts about Allah Ta'ala, and her nafs will be like nafs mutmainna. Her nafs will desire to become pleasing to Allah Ta'ala. Her nafs will only desire those things that make Allah Ta'ala happy. But if on the other hand her heart has unlawful love for ghairullah, has unlawful secret romantic love, or even worse, has unlawful lustful love, or has unlawful love for dunya, then the mind will see that, and the mind will always have thoughts about whatever or whoever she chooses to make her beloved. And the nafs will also see that, and the nafs will also base its desires on whatever or whoever she has chosen to make her beloved. So the qalb is the asl. That's why Allah Ta'ala said in Quran that if you have a qalbun salim, everything will be taken care of. Everything will be fine on that day. So, because our mind is always thinking different thoughts, and our nafs is always thinking different desires, it's very important then to keep our qalb occupied with good feelings. What does it mean? That for most people, their mind is always thinking. They're always thinking one thought after the other, and then they have a train of thought, and then those thoughts repeat themselves. This is a mercy of Allah Ta'ala. It enables us to remember things. So if you know you have to do something today, you will keep getting a recurring thought. That's a blessing from Allah Ta'ala. Otherwise, if you could only think something once, then you would forget things. So the coming of thoughts in of itself is not bad if you have a bad thought. But bringing a bad thought and dwelling on that bad thought and making into it a train of thought, that is bad. The only way we can be saved from having bad thoughts is by having good feelings in our heart. So that person whose heart becomes empty of feelings of Allah Ta'ala, then shaitan just plays with their thoughts. They have whatever thought shaitan wants to put waswas in them. Why? Because their aql would have followed their qalb, but they made their qalb empty. So now the aql had to look for another imam, and shaitan was happy to be imam of our aql. So it can be negative thoughts about people, negative thoughts about oneself, feeling about depression. All these negative thoughts come into our mind over and over again, only because we haven't put the proper feelings in our heart. But if we had the real feelings, the Quranic feelings, love for Allah Ta'ala, fear of Allah Ta'ala, tawakkul ala Allah, taqwa, feeling of sabr, feeling of shukr, feeling of dhikr, feeling of haya, if we had the feelings of iman in our heart, then our mind would never think any bad thoughts. Same thing is for the nafs, that the nafs is not going to have any bad desires on its own. It's first going to give the heart a chance. But if our heart is empty of good feelings, then the nafs will have to look to some other source. So the nafs will look at the dunya and makhluk, and it will base its desires on dunya and makhluk. So we will desire all type of materialistic desires, all type of worldly desires, all type of unlawful, lustful, romantic desires from makhluk. That is where nafs will go. But nafs gave aql the first chance. Nafs gave qalb the first chance. But because our qalb was empty, then the nafs had to look at something else to make its iman. So it took its imam as dunya and makhluk. So the aql will make shaitan its imam unless you make the qalb the imam of your aql. The nafs will make dunya and makhluk its imam unless you make qalb the imam of your nafs. So how do we make the qalb the imam of the aql and the nafs? Is by filling our heart with the feelings of iman. This is why all of the Anbiya wal Mursaleen, when they came to this world, they didn't even address the people's minds, they didn't address their nafs, they addressed the people's hearts. And they made sure they put the right feelings in the people's hearts, because they knew the secret that when the people's hearts have the right feelings and their hearts change, then their heart comes towards the right path, then automatically their aql and nafs will change as well. Automatically their thoughts and desires will be corrected as well. So if we can remove the corruption of the hearts, then we will necessarily be able to remove the corruption of the mind and the corruption of the nafs. And if we don't correct the heart, we will never be able to remove the corruption of the mind and the corruption of the nafs. And just like that, after Sayyidina Rasulullah left from this world, he said in hadith, Al-ulama'u warathatul anbiya, that the scholars are the heirs, legatees, the successors. They will continue the message and mission of the anbiya. So there are ulama in this ummah who also fulfill this function of Sayyidina Rasulullah, which is to focus on the heart and to put the feelings of iman in the heart. And that effort of deen is known as tazkiyah, that effort of deen is known as tasawwuf. And the awliyaullah are those mashayikh of tazkiyah, that they focus on the qulub, the hearts of people. And this is something that men and women equally need. Just like for many, many years, women were not so actively involved in ilm. But in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, our ulama began women's Darul Uloom. And now, mashallah, even in Blackburn, you have women's Darul Uloom. Why? Because they realize that women also need this ilm. Well, just like that, women also need to purify their qalb. Therefore, they also need the zikr of Allah Ta'ala. Because they also need Allah bi zikrillahi tatminul qulub. And this word in Quran, dhakirat, that those women believers who remember Allah Ta'ala. So every woman should want to be from the dhakirat. That's why women must also formally learn tasawwuf and dhikr, so that they may spiritually purify and develop their heart and become dhakirat, mu'minat, become sadiqat, mu'minat, become the true, loyal, loving, and obedient and beloved slaves of Allah Ta'ala. So Allah Ta'ala in Quran al-Kareem has mentioned that different types of human beings have different types of hearts. The worst spiritual heart is that heart that doesn't have any iman in it at all. Doesn't even have the nur of iman. So that is the heart of a kafir, that is the heart of a mushrik, that is the heart of a munafiq. That is the heart of a unbeliever, that is the heart of a idolater. That is a heart of an atheist. They have no nur of iman in their heart. So that is known as qalbun mayyit. That is called the dead heart. What does that mean? Their physical heart is alive, but their spiritual heart is dead. What does it mean? So that's what Sayyidina Rasulullah said, إِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. That if this heart is corrupt and spoiled, their whole being will be corrupt and spoiled. Whole being. So their physical heart may be fine. They may have a wonderful heart physically. They may live to 90 years old, no heart disease, no heart attack. But their spiritual heart is dead because it has no nur of iman. What does it mean for a person's spiritual heart to be dead? So Allah Ta'ala has given different examples of this in Quran. The first way Allah Ta'ala describes this in Quran is the blind heart. Allah Ta'ala says in Quran, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. That if only they had spiritual hearts, that they would use their spiritual hearts for understanding, that their hearts would teach them. This also teaches us from Quran that the real aql, ya'qilun, the real understanding doesn't come from the mind. The real understanding comes from the heart. But because this person's heart is dead, they're not able to get any understanding of the heart. O adhanu yasma'una biha. Or if only they had ears through which they would hear and comprehend and submit to the hidayah. But then what does Allah Ta'ala say about them? Because they don't do this. فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ. That indeed you should know that it's not the eyes that become blind. وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. But rather it's the spiritual hearts that are blinded. Those hearts that are in the breasts of people. Means the heart of our ruh has become blind. Imagine we would view it so sad if a person was physically blind. So how infinitely more sad should it be that there are some people who are spiritually blind? So the first example Allah Ta'ala gives of this is that they have a blind heart. What does it mean they're blind? They can't perceive what is true in deen. They can't perceive the reality of akhirah. They can't perceive that this lifestyle is bad for them. They can't perceive the haqqaniyya and the haqiqah, the truth and veracity of Islam. They're blind to all these things. And they're living their life as if the dunya is the be-all and end-all of life. And they're blind to sin. So we should think about ourselves, am I also have a blind heart? Have I also become blind to sin? Have I also become blind to the reality of akhirah and putting all of my love and effort in the dunya? If I find myself like that, then that means my heart is not qalbun salim, but rather my heart is resembling the dead heart of the disbeliever. The sign that this person has a dead heart is they have no interest in Allah Ta'ala. They have no longing for Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. They have no interest in longing towards the akhirah. All of their efforts and hopes and aspirations and interests are instead for this dunya. They just want to enjoy all the pleasures of this world. So they are a creature and slave of their desire, and they worship the pleasures of this world. And that is what makes them happy. So if their desire is fulfilled, they get happy. If what they want to happen happens, they're happy. And if what they don't want to happen, their desire, pleasure is not fulfilled, they're not happy. So they themselves become their own God. And this person, because their heart is dead, then the nafs has nothing to keep it in check. So the nafs becomes their God. That's why Allah Ta'ala said in Quran, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُهُ هَوَى, that do you not look and gaze and wonder in astonishment at that person who has taken their own hawa, their own whims and desires and fancies as their ilah, as their God. That's what happens to the person who has this blind heart and this dead heart. And they will go wherever their desire is filled. They won't have any izzah, they have no ghaira, means she will have no modesty, no dignity, no grace, no self-respect. She will jump from one place to the other, from one person to the other. Allahu Akbar. Why? Because her heart doesn't have the nur of iman. Then our ulama and mashayikh have mentioned that Allah Ta'ala has, first Allah Ta'ala has mentioned another example of this in Quran. So first way Allah Ta'ala describes it is blind heart. Then Allah Ta'ala describes it in a different way. Hard heart. Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, ثُمَّ قَسَدْ قُلُوبُهُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ, that then their hearts became hardened and more hardened after that. What does it mean, ذَلِكَ? After their disobedience to Allah Ta'ala, their repeated disobedience to Allah Ta'ala. Then what happened? فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ, then their hearts became like rocks, like boulders, like stone. Oh, أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً, but rather no, their hearts became even harder than stone, even harder than rock. Then Allah Ta'ala explains why. وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا, indeed from the rocks and the boulders, Allah Ta'ala says in Quran, لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارُ, that indeed sometimes springs can crack forth and burst forth and gush forth from the rock. But this person, their heart has become so hard that they don't even cry over their sin. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَشَقَقَّكُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهَا الْمَاءُ, that there will be even such rocks, and what will happen to them? يَشَقَّقُ, that they will split and asunder. فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ, and from them water will come forth. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا, and there are even some rocks, لَمَا يَحْبِتُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ, that they even fall down out of the fear of Allah Ta'ala. Means that this person's heart has become so hard it's worse than a rock. Means the signs Allah Ta'ala is mentioning here is they will never cry out of tawbah, and they will never feel any fear of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, because their heart has become harder than a rock. Now the Mashayikh mentioned the signs of this also, that they have a hard heart. Number one is that they have no hesitation in sinning. No hesitation and no regrets and no care for the other person. So they will sin without thinking twice. After the sin, they won't feel bad about it. And if in the course of that sin they hurt someone, they couldn't care about it. Allahu Akbar. But we have to look in ourselves that this hard heart was supposed to be, hard heart, blind heart, was supposed to be for the person who had a dead heart, who didn't have the nur of iman. But if we have iman in our heart, but we find the sign in us that we have a hard heart, that we don't have hesitation in sinning, we don't have any regret, and we don't care about the other person. So let's take, for example, ghiba, or using harsh words. So whether it's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, or it's sister-in-law and sister-in-law, or it's wife and husband, if she has no hesitation in saying harsh speech, and then she has no regret afterward, and she doesn't even care about the effect that it had on the other person, so all of that is what the Mashayikh and Awliya have mentioned as the sign of the hard heart. And who was supposed to have the hard heart? Not the mu'minah, the kafirah. So what's happened to us? That we have these signs in ourselves. Second sign that the Awliya mentioned that a person has a hard heart is their heart is so hard that they cannot soften it towards ibadah. They can't incline their heart towards a'mal salih. They find it extremely difficult to worship Allah Ta'ala or do any spiritually good deed. They find it a burden. So if their mom, she tries to bring them to bayan, they look at her in disgust. They find it difficult. Okay, maybe they will be forced to go. You have to force them. Why? What happened to her? She's a mu'minah woman. Why? Because she had a hard heart. She gave herself up to the dunya. She allowed herself to have these nafsani feelings for dunya and makhluk. So now, sohbah, bayan, majlis, nasiha, ibadah, a'mal salih, all of this appears like a burden for her. Difficult for her. She's apathetic. Apathy is absolutely uninterested in doing it. She has a sign of a hard heart. And the hard heart was supposed to be the heart of the kafirah, not the mu'minah. And the third sign that our awliya and mashayikh mention, that a person's heart has become hard, that they don't like it when anybody advises them. So if her mother tries to talk to her, she says, "Who are you to tell me what to do?" If her older sister tries to advise her, she says, "Why are you talking to me like this?" Whoever tries to guide her, she views that person as her enemy. She gets nafra. She gets hostility and enmity for that person who is trying to be their well-wisher, her advisor, her guider. Then she can even have such a hard heart that instead of listening to those around her who love her and wish well for her, she will just SMS someone and that person will pick her up and she will go off with that person, and then she will sit in the car and she will do ghibat of her own mother, brother, sister, father in the car with that person. That, oh, they're making my life so tough. They're always trying to push Islam down my throat. They're always telling me what to do. I can't take it anymore. Allahu Akbar. That's not the sign of a mu'minah. That's the sign of a person who has a hard heart. And that was a person who had a dead heart. Because when the heart is dead, it becomes blind and it becomes hard. So we should be scared. We should be scared. And yes, Allah Ta'ala gives life to the dead hearts. Allah Ta'ala, just like Allah Ta'ala can revive the dead and barren earth by sending His rain on it, just like that Allah Ta'ala can revive the dead heart by sending the rainfall of His hidayah on it, by sending rainfall of the words of wisdom of the mashayikh and awliya on it. So that's why we must, if we feel that we have any such sign in us, we should bring our hearts to the gatherings of the ulama, mashayikh, and we should try to soften our heart. We don't want to have that hard heart or that blind heart that is so blinded by love for dunya or unlawful love for ghairullah, that heart that is so hardened because of sin or hardened because of ghafla that we no longer feel the nur of our iman in our heart. Shaykh Hassan Basri, when somebody, a young man, came to him and said, "Shaykh, make dua for me." He said, "What dua?" He said, "Shaykh, make dua for me because my heart is sleeping." So he said, "Young man, why do you think your heart is sleeping?" So he said that, "Shaykh, because when you give bayan and nasiha, you say Qala Allahu Ta'ala, you say the words of Quran, you say Qala Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you say the words of hadith, it has no effect on me." So Shaykh Hassan Basri said that, "Oh young man, you shouldn't be worried that your heart is sleeping. You should be worried that your heart is dead." Why? Because if something is sleeping and you shake it, it wakes up. So if your heart was sleeping when it heard the words of Allah Ta'ala, words of the beloved Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, your heart would have woken up. So if it had no effect, it means your heart is dead. So the first type of heart that some humans have is called qalbun mayyit. Then there's the second type of heart that is known as qalbun marid. This is the heart of the sinful believer. So it's alive but sick. It's not dead, it's alive. What do you mean it's alive? It has the nur of iman. So it's a believer. She's a mu'minah. She has nur of iman. She does believe in Allah Ta'ala. So she's not mushrik, kafir, atheist, munafiq. No. She believes in Allah Ta'ala, believes in Quran, believes in Yawm al-Qiyamah, believes in Sayyidina Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But even though her heart is alive with the nur of iman, it's marid. It has sins. It's diseased and ill and sick because of her sins. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in Quran. And the ayah is actually a very intense ayah. It will also show the women what is the level of haya they should have. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, Ya nisa'an nabiy, that, O beloved wives of the beloved blessed Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, lastunna ka ahadim minan nisa, that you, all of you, you are not like any other woman. You are unique. You are unique. You have a special status and a special role. So then Allah Ta'ala tells them in Quran, in ittaqaytunna, that if you have true taqwa and you really want to fear Allah Ta'ala and be conscious of Him, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ, you should not soften your voice and try to make your voice alluring and attractive when you talk to the non-mahram. Why? فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٍ, because that person, fi qalbihi marad, that man who you try to speak to in a soft, alluring, attractive manner, so that man who fi qalbihi maradun, who has a disease and a sickness in their heart, fayatma'a, he will start having tama, he will have unlawful, lustful yearning and attraction towards you. Allahu Akbar. This ayah is being addressed to Ummahatul Mu'mineen. And if Ummahatul Mu'mineen ever did talk to a non-mahram man due to some need to get some learning, some advice, for some information, they would be talking to Sahaba. To Ya Allah, you are addressing ayah, it is about Ummahatul Mu'mineen and Sahaba. And yes, even there Allah Ta'ala is saying, so this was the closest brethren bond. Who could be more right to say they're brother and sister to one another than the male Sahaba and the female Sahabiyat? But Allah Ta'ala made it clear in this ayah that, okay, you are brother and sister in one sense, right? That all of the mu'mineen or ikhwa are brethren to one another. And you may even have to talk to one another for the sake of deen. But the women must make sure they don't make their voice soft and alluring and attractive. Because obviously if you make your voice soft, alluring and attractive, then the other may get attracted towards you. And who will get attracted towards you? The one who has a marad in their heart. So this means that there's another type of heart Allah Ta'ala is mentioning in the Quran. And this is a disease. And what happens when the person has a diseased heart? Then their desires overcome their taqwa. They have taqwa because they have iman. But their tama, their desire, overcomes their taqwa. So if there's a woman who has a diseased heart, she does love Allah Ta'ala, she may even pray to Allah Ta'ala, she may even be fasting every year in Ramadan, but because she has a disease in her heart, so she has the disease of lust in her heart, then the lust will overcome her taqwa. If she has the disease of envy in her heart, then the envy will overcome taqwa. Whatever disease she has, it will supersede her taqwa and it will make her do sin. Now what is the sign that a person has this qalbun mareed, that she has a diseased heart? Well, she's a mix. Sometimes she is lost in the love of Rahman, in the obedience of Rahman, of all merciful Allah Ta'ala, and sometimes she is lost in following and obeying shaitan. Sometimes she is like the awliya, she's praying tahajjud, she's crying and making dua to Allah Ta'ala, and sometimes she's like a fasika, she even skips her fard salah. She's diseased. Sometimes she's healthy, sometimes she's sick. So what would we do if we were physically diseased? If we had a physical marad, so we get treated. We would try and make sure, we would want to restore ourselves to 100% health. So shouldn't it be the same then if we have spiritual sickness, that we should want to get treated, we should want to get our spiritual health? If she was physically sick, she would go to a doctor. So if she's spiritually sick, she has to go to Sheikh. If she's physically sick, she'll go to hospital or clinic. If she's spiritually sick, she has to go to the masjid, khanka, zawiya, the place where she will be treated for that sickness. If she's physically sick, sometimes she will get treated through medicine, through rays, through waves. If she's spiritually sick, she has to go to the sheikh and get the dhikr adhkar, get the du'as that she must practice, and she should get the tawajjuh of sheikh, the nadar of sheikh. So it means in the ghaibana nazar of sheikh for a woman, but she has to get that attention. If she was physically sick, so she would make every effort to get cured. She wouldn't be lazy. She wouldn't waste time. She would promptly, quickly try to get cured. So if she's spiritually sick, she shouldn't waste time. She should promptly, quickly try to get cured. Why? What's the worst that can happen if she's lazy in treating her physical disease? The worst that can happen is she can die. She enters into the jaws of death. But if she's lazy in treating her spiritual disease, what's the worst that can happen? She can spiritually die, means she will enter into the jaws of Jahannam and Akhirah. So being spiritually sick is much more critical state than if a person is physically sick. Then Allah Ta'ala said in Quran, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا, that in their hearts is a disease. And now I will comment on this, explain it. And because they don't try to cure that disease, because they're content with that disease, because they're living with that disease, they're not trying to fix the disease, Allah Ta'ala will keep giving them a chance, a muhla, a reprieve. But if they don't, then فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا, then Allah Ta'ala will increase them in that disease. So if the woman, she has some disease in her heart, can be greed, can be envy, can be pride, can be lust, can be anger, and she doesn't try to fix it, she's lazy about it, she keeps indulging in that desire, then فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا, then Allah Ta'ala will increase her in that sickness. Then that person whom Allah Ta'ala increases their marad, is very difficult, almost impossible for them to get cured. So we want to act before this happens. So if we find that we are fi qulubihim maradun, that we have spiritual disease in our heart, before Allah Ta'ala increases us, we should try to get the cure. Try to get ourselves disease free. Try to clean and wash away the stains of sin from our heart. Don't you see, mashallah, the women of today, they don't like stain. If stain comes on the upholstery, they're not lazy, they quickly try to remove it. If a stain comes on their clothing, they're not lazy, they quickly try to remove it. If a stain comes on their carpet, they're not lazy, they quickly try to remove it. Or when she's cleaning the bathroom toilet bowl and she sees some stain in the toilet bowl, even though it's a place where all its lifetime of toilet bowl, people will keep putting najasa in it, even there she wants so much tahara, so much cleanliness, that she goes and gets the toilet bowl cleaner and she removes the stain of the toilet bowl. Oh my women, if you're going to remove the stain from upholstery, from clothing, from carpet, from toilet bowl, from shoes, from everything in your life, is it just your qalb that you're not worried about removing its stains? क्या आपको हर चीज़ की सिफाई की फ़िक्र है? क्या आपका एक कल्ब रूहानी दिल जिसको वो एक अल्लाह ताला देखते हैं, उसकी सिफाई की फ़िक्र नहीं? आपको हर सेहत मतलूब है. You have a dentist and you have your regular doctor and you exercise and nutrition. आपको हर सेहत मद्दे नज़र है, फ़कत उस कल्ब की सेहत आपको मतलूब नहीं. You're worried about every single aspect of your health physically. Is it just your spiritual health that you're not concerned with? How does a person cure this diseased heart? That is by making the zikr of Allah Ta'ala. Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ said, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ سِقَالَةٌ وَسِقَالَةُ الْقُلُوبِ ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ. That for each and everything there is a polish, a stain remover. And the stain remover of the spiritual hearts is the zikr of Allah Ta'ala. And women must learn the zikr. That's what Allah Ta'ala said in Quran, وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ. And those male believers who make a lot of dhikr, and the women believers who make a lot of dhikr. Why? Because everybody has stains on their heart. So everybody needs to do stain removal. So all the women should make niyyah in Ramadan that they want to become from dhakirat, and remove all of the stains that are in our heart, so we can get that qalbun salim that Allah Ta'ala said only and only with that qalbun salim will be successful on the Day of Judgment. So then what is that qalbun salim? So yes, there's a third type of heart. One is the dead heart, qalbun mayyit. One is the diseased heart, qalbun marid. And yes, there is a third type of heart. And some people are blessed to have that heart. And we should spend our life trying, even if we die trying to get that heart. And that is called qalbun salim. So that is the heart that is alive with the nur of iman, but is also healthy. That is the heart that the nur of iman in it is making their aql munawwar, making their nafs munawwar and mutmainna, making their body munawwar by making their body worship and obey Allah Ta'ala, is making their mind munawwar, that they're always having thoughts of the zikr of Allah Ta'ala. So it's the shining heart. Allahu Akbar. And what is it? Why is it shining? Because it's free from the stain of unlawful, lustful, romantic love. It's free from the stain of unlawful desires and greed and envy. It's free from that. Stain free. Just like you love to look at something that is stain free, so Allah Ta'ala also loves to look at that heart that is stain free. And when Allah Ta'ala's nazar, His gaze falls on that stain-free heart on the Day of Judgment, He will send that heart to Jannatul Firdaus, to the highest level of Jannah. So then we also need to know, right, how can I tell if my spiritual heart is alive and healthy or not? Just like the Western medical science has made so many tests to check whether physical heart is alive and healthy, so there should also be some test, some way to measure and check whether the spiritual heart is alive and healthy. And our mashayikh, awliyaullah, have mentioned the signs of that. So we should search in our own heart whether those signs are present, if that spiritual heart is alive and healthy. And if those signs aren't present, we should know that the spiritual heart is diseased and there's a danger that it's dead, and we should work in this month of Ramadan to try to get all of the signs and features of a qalbun salim. So there's several alamat, several signs and indicators that our mashayikh and awliyaullah have mentioned. First sign that a person has qalbun salim, that the spiritual heart is alive and healthy, is that a person gets what we call deed kusur. Imam Rabbani, Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi, Mujaddid al-Fisani Rahimahullah Ta'ala, in his famous work Maktubat, his collected, compiled letters to the great princes, his great khulafa, the great ulama and murideen of his time, he wrote about this concept, deed kusur. So it's a Farsi term, but it's also there in Urdu. Deed means to be able to see, and kusur means our faults. So deed kusur means that person who is aware of one's sins, who can notice one's faults, who is sensitive to sin. That is the first sign that a person has a qalbun salim. And this is a gift from Allah Ta'ala. This, when Allah Ta'ala is happy with a person, He graces them and gifts them with this deed kusur. He opens up their own faults, so she becomes aware of her faults. Now the mistake that we make is you shouldn't be sad if you notice your faults. You shouldn't misdiagnose this and get depressed or get an inferiority complex. No. If ever you find yourself noticing your faults, you should do shukr to Allah Ta'ala. You should realize this is Allah Ta'ala's hidayah coming on me. This is one way Allah Ta'ala guides me. By making me aware of my faults, I should be grateful to Allah Ta'ala. And I won't be depressed, because I have hope that that same Allah Ta'ala who is making me aware of these faults, surely Allah Ta'ala is doing it because He wants to purify me of these faults. Surely Allah Ta'ala's mercy and His rahmah and maghfirah are close behind His power to make me aware. And you will see Sahaba Ikram, Allahu Akbar Kabira, they were the greatest awliyaullah. They had so much deed kusur. They used to hold themselves up to a high level of accounting. Almost like they would have a microscope. They would examine themselves under a microscope. Any sin they had, slight sin, or they had even something remotely resembling sin, they got terrified of Allah Ta'ala. And it was their fear of Allah Ta'ala that saved them from the sin. So you may remember when our Shaykh came a few months ago in Blackburn, he gave bayan in Masjid Nur al-Islam, and he gave all of you the story of that Sahabiya from the tribe of Ghamidi, who she made true tawbah to Allah Ta'ala. Why? Because she was so sensitive to the sin of adultery that she committed, and she kept going to Sayyidina Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I won't repeat that long story, you should have heard it then. And she kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. Why did she keep coming? At any time she could have ran away, she could have hidden herself, she could have chosen to kept it secret. No, because she had deed kusur, because she saw and felt the enormous magnitude of her sin. Unko apna gunah ka bhoj mahsoos hota tha. That's called deed kusur. They would feel it. They would feel the burden of sin, and when they do that, then a person wants to become forgiven. Or like a Sahaba, Sayyidina Abu Lubaba radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he felt the burden, so he wanted to make true tawbah, so he bound himself with cord and rope to that famous pillar that is still there in Jannatul Firdaus in Masjid Nabawi. Ajib, Allah Ta'ala loved that pillar where Sayyidina Abu Lubaba radiallahu ta'ala anhu made his tawbah so much that Allah Ta'ala included it in Jannah. Allahu Akbar. That's how much Allah Ta'ala loves the people who make tawbah. So who is going to make that tawbah? That person who has deed kasur. That person will never be able to make tawbah until we see our own sins. That's why we were given a conscience. So that's why we even do muraqabah, to close our eyes and close our awareness from this world. Then we will be aware of the reality of our heart, and our heart will never lie to us. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah Ta'ala has inspired our heart. It knows what is fisk and fujur, what is fraud, and what is outrageous, and what is profanity, and what is vulgar, and what is crude sin. And it knows what is taqwa, it knows what is virtue, it knows what is piety. We just have to stop looking at our outward self and looking at what the world thinks about us, and we have to go into introspection and look at our heart. Our heart will tell us. And until a person gets that deed kusur, they will have two faces. One face that the creation sees, makhluk sees, and the one face that Khalik sees. Do rangi ki zindagi guzarenge. And when they don't have deed kusur, everybody else's faults they would notice. So they will notice other people's faults, and that's why they will have more bughz, more ghil, more hasad, more kibr, more takabbur, more ujub. They will have more spite and malice and hatred towards others because they notice their faults. But when they have deed kasur, then everyone will appear good to her. She will become ajiza. She will be so humble because she's so focused on her own faults. Everybody else, she will say, they're much better than me. I know my sins. I can feel the sting of my sin. I can feel the burden of my sin, and then I will view everyone else to be better than me. So she should beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this month of Ramadan. We should all beg to Allah ta'ala in this month of Ramadan that we get this deed kasur, that we get this sign that we have a qalbun salim. Because that's a sign that somebody is perfectly healthy. They will feel even a slight sickness. They will feel it. Slight knee pain, they will feel it. And a person who has all types of diseases, they may not even notice the knee pain. Second sign that our awliya al-mashayikh have mentioned, that a person has qalbun salim, is that she will enjoy ibadah. She will get the lazzat of ibadah. She is hooked on ibadah. Just like there's some girls and women, they're hooked on reading novels or magazines or surfing the net or watching TV or watching movies or watching drama or reading digest. They're addicted to it. They say, I enjoy it. I can do it for hours and hours. So this woman, mu'mina saleha, who has qalbun salim, just like those people who are hooked and addicted to all of those things, she is hooked and addicted to recitation of Quran, to reciting Durood Sharif, to making zikr of Allah Ta'ala, to making silent zikr in her heart, to making dua to Allah Ta'ala, to attending bayan, to listening to online bayan, to going to course, to listening to online class. This is what she's hooked on this. She enjoys it. It gives her more pleasure and satisfaction than the pleasures of this world. That's the sign she has qalbun salim. She loves praying salah. She loves making dhikr. So if we don't have this sign in us, it means we don't have qalbun salim. But what happened is we forgot our purpose. We made the mistake and started thinking that we exist to enjoy the worldly blessings. We have been given life to enjoy the lazat and sweetness of the dunya. So we enjoy having the nice home and the nice dish set and the nice microwave and the nice car and the nice clothing. Actually, we were supposed to find you can have all of those things, but you weren't supposed to get so much enjoyment from them. Why? Because your enjoyment and pleasure and satisfaction was supposed to come from deen, from akhirah, the lazzat of ibadah, the lutf and halawa of iman, the serenity and sweetness of iman and worship. So we have to do that in Ramadan. And again, you will see in Ramadan, Allah Ta'ala gifts a person this for free. Every person who is fasting, believer in Ramadan, will get more enjoyment from deen and akhirah in this month, and they will get less enjoyment from the dunya and mal in this month. So Allah Ta'ala will give it to us automatically in this month, but we have to work at it and want it to be able to retain it after this month. Means that she will enjoy her salah. She will pray with khushu and khudu, with awe and reverence and fear of Allah Ta'ala, and love and concentration and awareness of Allah Ta'ala. You can just imagine that person whose qalb is qalbun salim, when they bring that qalb into salah, what type of feelings they experience in their salah. Allahu Akbar Kabira. So we should make more effort in our life to get this qalbun salim. More effort to get this qalbun salim. And then another sign is that when a person's qalb is qalbun salim, then they remove from their heart all of the unlawful loves, and all of their relationships become colored with the nisbat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of their relationships are for the sake of Allah ta'ala, in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even their relationship with the world also becomes khalisatan lillah fillah, becomes exclusively and only for the sake of Allah Ta'ala, in the name of Allah Ta'ala, to seek the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. It becomes everything about her life is to seek the pleasure of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So then the next sign is that if she loses and misses anything out, if she misses any opportunity to please Allah Ta'ala, or she slept through some prayer, or she missed the opportunity to do a good deed, then she feels sadness and sorrow over that. When the person has diseased heart, they feel sad and sorrow if they missed an opportunity for the dunya, but they don't feel sad and sorrow if they miss an opportunity for deen and akhirah. But the person with qalbun salim, they feel sad and sorrowful if they miss an opportunity to become pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the signs our Mashaykh mentioned that a person has qalbun salim. We should want that in this month of Ramadan that we get this qalbun salim, and all of the effort of tasawwuf and tazkiyah is precisely this, to get this pure heart, to get these sifat, to get these characteristics, to get these feelings, that we feel the sting of sin, that we feel the enjoyment and sweetness of iman, that we feel sad when we miss an opportunity, that all of our relationships are for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we should want to get all the signs of qalbun salim in our heart, that we get didi kusur, that we're aware of our faults, and the path of tasawwuf and tazkiyah, the path that is called tariqah, is just a way to get these feelings, and the shaykh is just a guide to get these feelings. We make dua that Allah Ta'ala join us with all of our rightly guided mashayikh and accept us on this path of tazkiyah and tasawwuf, and make every one of the women amongst the dhakirat, and make this Ramadan a month where each and every one of us gets this qalbun salim, maz out of his fazl and karam, out of his generosity and grace. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi Kareem, ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتوب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. So before we make dua, we will recite some words of tawbah. Allah Ta'ala said in Quran, Tubu ilallahi jami'a ayyuhal mu'minun la'allakum tuflihun. So we should all make tawbah to Allah Ta'ala, and especially make niyyah that we're making tawbah from that qalbun mayat that we have, from the blind heart that we have, from the hard heart that we have, from all of the signs that were mentioned that we find in ourselves. And Ya Allah, we're making tawbah from having a qalbun mareed, of having a diseased and sick heart, and from all of the signs of that we found in ourselves. And Ya Allah, we are making intention on this day that in the future, Ya Allah, we want our entire life to be for earning your pleasure and following the sunnah of your beloved Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We want to spend our entire life doing our tazkiyah, our islah. We want to spend our life trying to get this qalbun salim. So all the women, they should make niyyah in their heart, and all those listening and present should make niyyah in their heart, that we want to make true tawbah so that we may get this qalbun salim. And those women who want to become students of tazkiyah, students of tariqah, want to give bay'ah and learn this path of zikr, so that we can be true to this tawbah, so that we can get this qalbun salim, so that we can learn how to remove the stains on their heart, they can also make that niyyah as well. And the dhikr adhkar that our mashayikh teach is, number one, every day you should recite Quran al-Kareem. Number two, every day you should make istighfar 100 times a day. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbi wa atubu ilayh. Number three, 100 times a day you should recite durood, salawat ala Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by saying Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. The fourth thing we should do every day is all the time we should try to remind our heart to remember Allah Ta'ala, so that all the time we're remembering Allah Ta'ala. Whether we're at home, we're at the store, we're with family, we're at work, we're with friends, all the time our heart should be remembering Allah Ta'ala. So in Arabic the zikr is called wuquf qalbi. It means to pause our heart on the zikr of Allah, even though we may be busy and engaged in this world. So the way to do this is to keep checking your heart. So for example, if a woman, her name is Fatima, so she should look in her heart, and before she starts any activity, she should make sure she feels some feelings for Allah Ta'ala in her heart. Feeling of shukr, feeling of love, feeling of fear, feeling of dhikr. She should think Allah Ta'ala said, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, He's close to me, I want to feel His qurb. He has said, هُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَ مَا كُنْتُمْ, He's with me, I want to feel His ma'iyya. And then she should begin her activity. Then during that activity, she should keep checking her heart, spiritual heart. That did you get so involved in this activity, Fatima, that you forgot Allah Ta'ala? In the beginning you'll find yes. So then remind your heart, refresh that zikr. So keep remembering and keep reminding. You can do this thousands of times a day until your heart starts remembering Allah Ta'ala on its own. So this is one way of zikr. And the last way of zikr we'll share with you today, that's called muraqabah. So that means that you should make short, silent zikr of Allah Ta'ala in your heart, such that you forget everything in the world and you only remember His name, and your tongue is silent, but you're polishing your heart and making niyyah that your qalb, your spiritual heart, is calling Allah Ta'ala's name. So we will recite the words kalimat of tawbah and kalimat of learning tazkiyah if the people want to make that niyyah as well. And you repeat these words after me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La ilaha illallahu Muhammadur Rasulullah. Amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhiri wal qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi min Allah Ta'ala wal ba'thi ba'dal maut. Amantu billahi kama huwa bi asma'ihi wa sifatihi wa qabiltu jami'a ahkamihi iqrarum bil lisani wa tasdiqum bil qalb. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin wa atubu ilayh. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Amen. Alhamdulillah, by reciting these words, all of us have made our niyyah for tawbah, and those who made intention have also made their niyyah to embark on this path of tazkiyah and learn zikr. They should practice the zikr that we mentioned, the 5 things, and then once they learn, and they should listen to the bayans. Those who know Urdu should listen to the bayans of our Sheikh on the website and read his books, and those who are less familiar with Urdu, they should listen to the bayans on the Islamic Spirituality website in English, and they should remain in touch. And we have made a whole online khanqa for women called Zainab Academy Online. and you should participate in that and get to meet other women who are also seeking the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala accept each and every one of us for a life of tazkiyah and a life of taqwa. So before we make dua, spend a few minutes in muraqabah. Close your eyes and bow your head. Disconnect yourself from this world and everything that it contains. Make niyyah that you're going deep into your qalb, deep into your ruh, like Allah Ta'ala said in Quran, وَذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ, and remember your Rabb inside your nafs, تَضَرُّعًا وَخِيفًا, with all humility, silently, secretly. Ya Allah, I'm going deep into my room, my qalb, and doing dhikr of you. As you said in Quran, وَذْكُرْ إِسْمَ رَبِّكَ, I'm making dhikr of your name. Ya Allah, you said in Quran, فَذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, that if I did dhikr of you, you would do dhikr of me. Ya Allah, I ask that you do dhikr of me by sending the nur of your hidayah onto my qalb. Soften my heart towards the deen. Melt this hard heart. Soften this hardened heart. Make again alive this dead heart. Grant me that qalbun salim. And Ya Rabbi Kareem, I am making dhikr of you, that my qalb is making dhikr of your Ism Azam, Ism Jalala, as if my qalb is calling Allah, Allah, Allah. Wash all the sins away and change my dead heart. Wash all the sins away and change my dead heart. Make me alive again, give me a fresh start. Where shall I go? Whom can I ask besides you? Where shall I go? Whom shall I ask besides you? Without your help, there is nothing I can do. I close my eyes, and it is you that I see. I close my eyes, and it is you that I see. So fill my heart with your love and mercy. Wash all the sins away and change my dead heart. Make me alive again, give me a fresh start. We are forgetful, leading lives so empty. We are forgetful, leading lives so empty. I may forget you, please don't you forget me. I may forget you, please don't you forget me. I know one day that I must leave the dunya. I know one day that I must leave this dunya. Please help me leave it as your friend, Ya Allah. Please help me leave it as your friend, Ya Allah. I do not know what kind of friend that you are. I do not know what kind of friend that you are. You come so near whenever I run so far. You come so near whenever I run so far. Wash all the sins away and change my dead heart. Make me alive again, give me a fresh start. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Dua कीजिए मैं एक दुआ सुब्हान रब्बी अल वहाब अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला सय्यिदिना मुहम्मद व अला आलि सय्यिदिना मुहम्मद व बारिक वसल्लम रब्बना ज़लमना अनफुसना व इन लम तग़फिर लना व तरहमना लनकूनन्ना मिनल ख़ासिरीन रब्बि इग़फिर वरहम व अंता खैरुर राहिमीन. Ya Allah, you are a kind, generous, loving Rabb. You have always been Kareeb to us. You have always been ma'ana with us. Zalamna anfusana. Ya Allah, we wronged our own selves. We allowed ourselves to become distant from you. We allowed ourselves to forget you. Ya Rabbi Kareem, our hearts became empty of you. Ya Allah, we ask in this blessed month of Ramadan, in this month of your mercy and fazl and karam, Ya Allah, that you send your maghfirah on us, send your rahmah on us. Ya Allah, forgive us for all the sins that we ever did. Forgive us for all the time that we wasted. Forgive us for all the ghaflat that we did. Forgive us for all the foolish talk that we did. Forgive us for all the vain pursuits that we pursued. Forgive us for all the times that we were idle. Ya Rabbi Kareem, let us do more qadr of our waqt, Ya Allah. Let us be more dynamic, Ya Allah. Take out the laziness from our nafs, Ya Allah. Take out the ghafla in our heart, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we too want to have a heart that is always pure. Ya Rabbi Kareem, we can ask and beg that you give us a life of taqwa, Ya Allah. And if ever we slip and fall, if ever we sin, Ya Allah, send your hidayah on us, Ya Allah. Remind us, Ya Allah. Enable us to do true tawbah, Ya Allah. Let that tawbah be lasting, Ya Allah. Let it be everlasting, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi Kareem, we ask that you make our hearts from qalbun salim. Ya Allah, we also want to be more aware of our flaws. Ya Allah, grant us deed qusur, Ya Allah. Make us sensitive to our sin. Make us aware of our sin. Make us always begging your forgiveness for sin. Make us always trying to improve ourselves out of sin. And Ya Allah, Rabbi Kareem, we ask that you grant us the lazzat of ibadah, the halawa of iman, the lutf of manajah. Ya Rabbi Kareem, let us enjoy this deen once again. Let us feel the pleasure of deen again. Let us be yearning for the pleasures of akhirah. And Ya Allah, Rabbi Kareem, make us humble, Ya Allah. Make us sad whenever we sin. Make us sad whenever we miss any opportunity. Ya Allah, put all of the alamat of qalbun salim in our heart. Take out all the alamat of qalbun mareed from our heart. Take out all the alamat of qalbun mayat from our heart. Ya Allah, we ask that you take out all the unlawful loves from our heart, all the unlawful attractions from our heart, all the unlawful feelings from our heart. Grant us a heart that loves you and loves in your name and loves for your sake and loves your beloveds and loves your lovers, and take out all of the loves from our heart. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi Kareem, हमारे गुनाहों को माफ़ फरमा, फजल का मामला फरमा, करम का मामला फरमा. या रब्बी करीम, हमारे दिलों को साफ़ फरमा, हमारे दिलों को अपनी याद के लिए कबूल फरमा, हमारे दिलों को अपनी मोहब्बत से लबरेज़ फरमा, हमारे दिलों को दीन के साथ नथी फरमा, हमारे दिल को आखिरत की फ़िक्र नसीब फरमा, हमारे दिल सीने को हर वक्त अपनी याद अता फरमा, हमारे दिल को नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की मोहब्बत अता फरमा, हमारे दिल को तमाम सिफ़ात ईमान, सिफ़ात मोमिनाना अता फरमा. या रब्बी करीम, ये औरतें आई हैं आपको तलाश में, आपकी मोहब्बत में. या रब्बी करीम, करम का मामला फरमा, सबको अपनी मोहब्बत अता फरमा, इनको सहाबियात वाला सिफ़ात अता फरमा, सालिहात में से बना, ज़ाकिरात में से बना, कानितात में से बना, सादिकात में से बना, मुतसद्दिकात में से बना. या रब्बी करीम, तमाम औरतों को सैयदतना मरियम रज़ी अल्लाह तआला अन्हा वैसी हयात अता फरमा. अगर वो इस वक्त में इस माशरत में होती, उनको उठना बैठना, उनका मिलना जुलना, उनका किरदार वकार जैसे होता, इन सब औरतों को भी वैसे बना, उनका ओढ़ना पहनना भी वैसे बना. या रब्बी करीम, शरीयत सुन्नत पर करना आसान बना. या रब्बी करीम, आपकी रज़ा के मुताबिक जीना, या रब्बी करीम, वो हमारा ज़िंदगी का मकसद बना. या रब्बी Kareem, accept our du'as on this day, accept our du'as, all the du'as that we will make in Ramadan, all the du'as that we made in past Ramadan, all the du'as that any and all salihin and salihat made in Ramadan, those that are munasib in our haqq, accept all those du'as on our behalf as well. Ya Rabbi Kareem, we make du'a for all of the women in this community, all of their friends, all of their families, all of their homes, all of their teachers, their muallimat. Ya Rabbi Kareem, accept all of their hearts for your special love. Increase the strength of their hearts and strength the quwwat of their iman. Grant them istiqamat on deen. Ya Allah, anybody who has any difficulty at home, make it easy for them. Soften the hearts of all the family members towards deen. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi Kareem. Ya Allah, we ask that all the du'as we made, that you grant them. All the du'as that are sincere, du'as that are heartfelt in all of the hearts of everyone, grant all of those du'as, Ya Rabbi Kareem. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتوب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على حبيبه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين.